I am Gregory Sampson, Solutions Architect at the International Trade Center. The SME Toolkit works indeed a bit like a sustainability coach, and it helps small businesses make sense of complex sustainability rules.
I'm Aparna Soni from ADB, the Relationship Manager for Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program. That's the challenge we have often heard. There are just far too many standards, far too many compliance requirements, and none of them is easy to understand.
Welcome to Trade Treasury Payments, the podcast unlocking the future of cross-border finance.
From transaction banking and money movements
to liquidity, treasury, and cash management.
We bring you expert insights and the latest trends shaping global finance. Imagine you're a garments exporter in Bangladesh, trying to grow your business overseas. You've secured interest from a buyer in Germany, but there's a hurdle: sustainability compliance. As ESG expectations rise across global supply chains, SMEs face a growing web of environmental and social standards. That's the standards that are fast becoming a prerequisite for trade, finance, and growth. What once applied only to large corporates now shapes access to markets for small businesses too. To level the playing field, the Asian Development Bank's Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program has teamed up with the International Trade Center to launch the SME Standards Navigation Toolkit, which is a solution that aims to help firms navigate standards, identify compliance gaps, and connect with financiers who value ESG progress. I'm Dipesh Patel, editor at Trade Treasury Payments. So joined with us today, I'm delighted to have Aparna Soni from ADB's Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program and Gregory Sampson, Solutions Architect at the International Trade Center. Aparna, Gregory, welcome to TTP.
Thank you, Dipesh. Really thank you for having us here. It is our pleasure to be able to talk about this such an important initiative, something which will really make a lot of difference for SMEs and the financing institutions.
So let's dive straight into the problem. Greg, I'll start with you. Why are sustainability standards a critical barrier today, or even an opportunity for SMEs looking to access global markets and trade globally? So perhaps we can start with that 50,000-foot helicopter view.
Great question, Dipesh. Listen, I really feel that sustainability standards can actually be a bit of both, right? They can both be a barrier and an opportunity. And if we start with the kind of barrier, I would really think of three potential reasons as to how they can be seen as hurdles for small businesses that go international. First of all, I really think that there is a high compliance cost. Complying to these sustainability standards takes time, they're expensive, requires a lot of resources, and often these small businesses lack access to these resources to pay things such as audits, certification, or the operational changes which are required for the implementation of these complex standards. Second reason why I think these can be seen as barriers, there's an overload of these sustainability standards, right? We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of standards, and it's very hard for a small company to navigate through this landscape and to know even which one applies to them, which ones are applicable to the target markets where they're exporting. And many of these businesses have small teams, right? They don't necessarily have an entire unit that's dedicated to sustainability, yet they have to respond to the demands from the market. And the last hurdle is if you don't comply to these standards, very often you can be excluded from access to markets altogether. These are becoming mandatory requirements by buyers in Europe, North America, and Asia, which are tightening the due diligence and sustainability requirements. So I really see three potential barriers, but at the same time, these can be game-changing opportunities. And these standards can give you access into premium, into long-term market relationships with buyers who want to commit to longer contracts. These standards can also give you guidelines as to how you can improve your operational and reputational status with regards to buyers. And last but not least, these can really signal trust and credibility. So they really represent a bit of both, and then neither real barriers or opportunities. And I really think that this SME toolkit, as we'll see a bit later in this podcast, can help you turn these standards and barriers into actual opportunities.
Thanks, Greg. And actually, I'm going to keep you on the podcast because this is all the stuff that we are hearing. We've just come out of the ITC Ministerial SME Conference in Joburg, and that's the rhetoric that we are hearing. Are you saying to overcome those barriers around cost, the overload of standards being excluded to the market, there is a financial opportunity here for SMEs once they are included and build those longer term relationships in the market, once they improve their reputation opportunities, that comes with a revenue opportunity for them too, right?
Absolutely, because it's all about cost benefit, right? And ultimately, upfront, there is a high cost, but down the line, if it's done efficiently, if it's done with a lot of awareness and knowledge and access to information and tools such as the SME Toolkit, then you can open access towards the benefits. But if you go into it not knowing what you're doing, then you can be facing quite a few hurdles and actually face more costs than opportunities.
Thanks very much. And Aparna, over to you, because you're from the Trade and Supply Chain Finance program at the Asian Development Bank. And the aim of that division is to really close some of those market gaps by providing guarantees and loans to mobilize private capital, but also advocacy. So provide some of those knowledge, products, services, and solutions that help embed key initiatives that kind of hinder market gaps, sustainability, digitalization, governance across trade and supply chain. So with that in mind, there are so many standards out there in this area apparent. How can a small business, perhaps in Bangladesh or Fiji, actually make sense of what standards applies to them?
Thanks, Dipesh. And as you rightly pointed out, at our team, Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program, that's one of the questions we've continuously been discussing and we're trying to find solutions for. While we deal through banks, but whenever we work for SMEs, that's the challenge we have often heard. There are just far too many standards, far too many compliance requirements, and none of them is easy to understand. The question is there are actually two different challenges here, too many and just too difficult. We have actually, as an end user, tried reading through some of these sustainability requirements, and it was mind-boggling. Just couldn't make sense of it. That's why ideation of a toolkit like this came up. We're very happy that finally we are out there able to solve this problem. Now, for many SMEs, especially if the markets like Bangladesh or Fiji and most of the emerging markets, this maze is not easy. It's really expensive to pass through. There are hundreds of standards, and it's not just easy to find out which one matters for a specific sector, for specific buyers, or if its export markets needs can be met. The objective through this toolkit is to simplify, demystify this through this complicated labyrinth of standards which we have. It actually starts with a very quick scan and of the company profile. Are they defining target market? And then the system is inbuilt to match the relevant business standard for the specific sector, geography, and the sustainability goals of the respective company. And of course, this system doesn't just stop here. It just doesn't list down the standards. It actually helps SMEs to understand where they stand, highlight what is the missing areas in their sustainability journey, and then works further to highlight what are the steps they can improve. So the idea of the toolkit is for SMEs to get ready to be compliant without specifically spending lots of their resources in terms of money, in terms of manpower to achieve this. Easy to use, checklist-based tools out there available to identify the gaps and identify the action steps to fulfill those gaps in their sustainability journey. It's like having a sustainability coach in your pocket, easy to use, all powered through AI, and get the right solutions. That's the objective of building this toolkit, and it will help SMEs to simplify and ease their journey of getting themselves compliant for sustainability standards.
Maybe it works in a similar way to some kind of body or health checking. You go to the doctors, you have your body scan, it might identify health challenges or problems, but then give you guidance on how you might be able to improve your lifestyle to reduce the risk of certain diseases.
Hey, enjoying this podcast? Hit that follow button for more. Done? Let's get back to it.
So, Greg, let's go into the technicalities. How does the toolkit actually work principally? How can SMEs actually use it to understand some of those rules and then link them on the correct journey, whether that's to access new markets, new buyers, new banks and finance? Can you walk us through the journey?
I will bounce on what Aparna was mentioning, that the SME Toolkit works indeed a bit like a sustainability coach. And it helps small businesses make sense of complex sustainability rules. This tool was built also based on experience that ITC acquired on the field, supporting small, medium-sized enterprises with coaches through a 6-month process. We've had some learnings, and we wrap this up in a toolkit which enables a small company to complete an exercise in a little over an hour. And I'll take you through the steps right now, how this takes place. So as you mentioned, Deepesh, you're not really doing the health check right now with this toolkit. You're doing more of a readiness check. You're doing a quick scan to see where your business stands. And SMEs have to answer a few guided questions about their operations. And here we're not talking about hundreds of questions. We're talking about 13 very targeted questions. And the toolkit uses artificial intelligence to generate a small report to show where your company is performing really well when it comes to potential sustainability compliance. And it also identifies spots or gaps where your company may need to strengthen a little bit, some of its activities. So that's really the first step. The second step, once you've done that readiness check, that you're ready to venture into this, because compliance to this ESG requirements, the sustainability standards, is not for everyone. If you're not ready, then you might have to take a bit of a break and then do a few things differently before you can venture into this. But if you are ready to venture into this, then you move to the second phase where you go beyond the quick scan and you complete a sustainability assessment that gives you more tailored advice and will actually match the right standards for you. And this is, again, where the toolkit uses artificial intelligence to suggest which sustainability standards. We were talking earlier about hundreds, thousands of standards. Which are the ones that make the most sense for your business based on your company size, the stage at which it is in its sustainability and evolution. And we really tried to remove some of the confusion around what are the rules to follow. And the last step that you do, once you've identified the standards, which may be a best match, best in potential interest to your buyers, then the toolkit builds a step-by-step action plan. And this is where we really provide some personalized roadmap with potential areas that need to be improved. We provide access. We connect them to resources that can help them implement some of the guidance that are provided by the tool. And ultimately, after all of it, where does finance come in? Well, by understanding and improving the sustainability performance, SMEs can then become eligible for sustainable finance.
Are you able to give any kind of practical examples? Like, are there specific regulations in specific markets, perhaps, that an SME might not have known about before? Had they then used the toolkit, they can actually take the advice that's being given, and actually that helps them improve that relationship or access a new market.
So I can give you an example. There can be an SME that operates in the textile and garment sector, because this is really the sector that we're focusing on with this SME toolkit as part of this first rollout. Well, this company in Bangladesh is exporting to Germany, and it knows that it needs to comply to sustainability requirements imposed by buyers. In some instances, a buyer may say, listen, you need to comply to standard A, B, or C. in which case the company can use the toolkit to complete a sustainability assessment and then assess, based on its current situation, which is the standard that has the best fit for them. Is it standard A, standard B, standard C? And then based on this first exercise, let's say the company identifies that standard C is the best match, then they can go into the action plan and really have a good understanding and personalized roadmap as to what it would take to comply to that standard C. That is a requirement by the buyer in Germany.
Thank you. And then that allows them to go into Germany, work with that buyer because it's using standard C, for example. Aparna, sustainability often feels like a cost. And I guess that's a bit of a hindrance, such a turn-off to those SMEs. How can ADB's Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program and the International Trade Center reframe that idea of a cost into a competitive advantage that allows those businesses, often from emerging markets, to access developed markets like those German buyers?
I will actually allude to the earlier discussion on whether the sustainability is a barrier or an opportunity. It is costly to reach to that journey of sustainability, and thus it is seen as a barrier. Through this toolkit, we have tried to mitigate this. In the journey of sustainability, the cost comes at getting ready and then getting yourself audited. The first part is what we have tried to address here, getting ready, so that resource crunch SME can only focus on to get themselves certified and only look at the cost of getting themselves certified. So that takes care of the cost part of it and the big barrier that cost which it becomes. Now, once you're ready and you get yourself certified, it just provides a lot more opportunities to target those export markets. Now, if you look at Europe and the kind of the regulations which are coming in and being implemented, the access to these markets will become highly restrictive if the SMEs do not start taking due actions to achieve their sustainability goals. And thus, it is important to not look at it as barrier, but rather look at it as an opportunity. By getting yourself certified, you get access to these new markets. That's one area of it. The second area of it is even the financiers, the investors, the bankers these days look at the certain minimum expectations on the sustainability requirements, the readiness to the sustainability. So the tools like these and identify where your readiness journey is will help you to be ready to the demands and expectations of the banks. And it will also help banks to identify where their borrowers stand, where in the journey, and work together with their borrowers to get themselves certified and be ready. So it serves a dual purpose. One is to get yourself certified and access the market. And second is access to financing. Through this one toolkit and through this entire journey, you get overcome both the barriers together. The additional benefit which we see is not for the SMEs and the banks only, but rather also for the lawmakers as a way to identify the clusters of SMEs, where they stand on their readiness and what is the additional help these SMEs need. Even from the lawmakers' point of view, if we see the data points which these toolkits can generate, help the lawmakers to relocate their resources based on the needs of the SMEs, where there are gaps of the SMEs in their sustainability journey, and identify and locate their resources, the training requirements, or subsidy, whatever different types of allocations which lawmakers need to do can be modified for the specific segments in the industry.
I'm sold and I'm keen to find out what's next. Greg, are there any upcoming new features of the toolkit, and how are you going to measure the impact of the use of the platform that this could have on perhaps banks or buyers when it comes to assessing SME risk in the future?
I think that right now, the next features of the toolkit will speak to a major gap in today's landscape. And that is, banks struggle to get reliable, standardized insights into how sustainable a small business really is. And on the other side, SMEs who are taking steps towards sustainability have no easy way to prove it or to use it as a leverage for better financing or buyer relationships. So the upcoming features of the tool are designed to change that. And I think that there are four major new features that will be coming in. First of all, the toolkit will now directly connect SMEs with banks and investors. And we're going to be doing this by creating a green investment repository where companies that have completed these sustainability assessments will be made visible to financiers who are looking for credible sustainability ready businesses. The second new feature of this SME Sustainability Toolkit will be a plug and play module for banks. Now, we've heard of similar tools existing, and at ITC with ADB, we did a SWOT analysis of 13 other tools that exist in the market, right? And we're not there to replace them. We're not there to create yet another tool. But what we are trying as part of the next phase is to really build a module that will enable local banks to use the system integrated within the platform to run a screening of the sustainability credentials of a business. So really a lightweight module that gives them access to credible, standardized information and also to assess the risks of financing a potential SME. The third feature that ITC has been working on for quite some years and where it wants to integrate its knowledge within the SME Sustainability Toolkit is provide a way for those businesses that already comply to these sustainability standards to enable banks to check the certification status of a business. So I'll give you an example, Dipesh. If I'm a company, yet again, that same company in Bangladesh that is exporting to Germany, I did identify standard C was the most reliable, applicable for me. I become certified to standard C. Well, maybe this can give me access to preferential loans to a local regional bank in Bangladesh. But then how does the bank know whether or not the certificate that I have against standard C is valid or not, right? So we will find a way to communicate this information through an initiative which is called the Certified Business Registry, where we are already engaging with 11 standards that are sharing information with us about all the businesses that have sustainability credentials. And we will make this available. And the last thing that we will continue working on is the AI feature, right? Earlier, we're talking about how this SME toolkit is a bit like a sustainability coach. Maybe, who knows, we'll be working more with a sustainability agent, but we really want to ride this wave of AI and facilitate the whole process for SMEs. So this is really the vision that we have for the next phase.
Thank you very much, Gregory. And I guess as solutions architect, I could tell you're very enthusiastic. So I'm confident that we'll deliver those features. Aparna, final question to close us off. I mean, look, as I said, we've just finished the ITC SME Ministerial access to this kind of information, these toolkits to help SMEs thrive and access global value chains and access buyers in developed markets is absolutely critical. To hold you accountable here, what do you think success will need to look like, perhaps in the 12-month view, so in a year's time, not just for the toolkit though, but more broadly in this effort to make sustainable trade more inclusive, particularly for SMEs in emerging and developing markets?
Success for me here specifically is twofold. First, I would really like to see thousands of SMEs being able to use the toolkit and not just to tick the boxes and complete the checklist, but really genuinely improve their practices and access the new opportunities. We did pilot of the toolkit in multiple markets, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, where the feedback which we have seen from the users makes me very confident that it will definitely make a difference for the SMEs. Secondly, I also want to see the financial institutions and the buyers using this toolkit as a data center, which Greg just talked about. If we can help banks recognize sustainability progress as part of their credit assessment, we're not just helping SMEs comply, we're also helping them grow. And that's how this entire trade finance journey of sustainability can be seen to be growing and to be more inclusive. These are the two key critical success factors I see in coming future.
You heard it here first on trade treasury payments at the back of the ITC Ministerial SME Conference in Joburg, an example of a toolkit that can help SMEs compete sustainably in global trade. That was Aparna Soni at the Asian Development Bank's Trade and Supply Chain Finance Program, and Gregory Sampson, Solutions Architect at the International Trade Center. Aparna, Gregory, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dipesh.
Thank you very much.
And don't forget to follow Trade Treasury Payments
on your favorite podcast platform.
Thanks for listening.